And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host Laraib, as we are excited to break down week 14 of the NFL season, Laraib. Lots of games to get to. We did not film our predictions episode last week because it was Mr. Arain's birthday. So
Ooh.
happy 23rd birthday, Laraib,
Jordan year.
to every single person who comments and likes. So I need a comment and a like to follow. I will Venmo Rob $1. So if you want to
Ooh.
help him out for his birthday, come on, like and comment. We need all the algorithm we can get. But yeah, interesting week last week. A lot of weird outcomes from all the games. Some things we expected, some things not. But the season's starting to round into form as we only have 4 weeks left, Larab. That sounds crazy saying it out loud, but that is the truth. But Larab, anything you want to say before we head into these picks?
Let's just go ahead and get into the picks, Lewis. I know you're going to want to run through them really quickly, but I eke out a win by just 1 point, and it all really came down to your lock not hitting and my lock did hit. And, we had a couple of differences here and there. I like Kansas City, who lost. I like the Chargers, who lost. I like Philly as an upset, who lost. But at the end of the day, a win is a win. And now I think I have 2 weeks on you with only 4 weeks to go, Lewis. I'm feeling real good.
Yeah, no, this really wasn't the week for me to drop an egg, but man, oh man. I mean, look at all the losses here. Atlanta, Detroit. Gardner Minshew has his worst game of the entire season, which is not saying much. And then, I mean, even the ones that we agreed on, I mean, Houston, just awful performance. And Minnesota, that game was ugly, even though we got it right. And then the two Monday night games, which let's just go ahead and get into them, Larob. Didn't pay much attention to. And I remember week 2 when I was talking about how I don't like the doubleheader Monday nights. Because I was like, I don't like to switch channels and they do the double box thing if I'm trying to watch both games at the same time. So it's just really awkward timing and pacing. But at least they were like, what, 30 minutes, 45 minutes apart in week 2. They had the exact same kickoff in week 14 when your viewership is not at an all-time high throughout the season. Why? Like, what is the rationale here? Just to split viewership, to split ratings, to I don't know. I don't get it. But that's a whole different discussion. We are here to talk the football aspect of it, which is harder to watch because of these production decisions. But I digress. Laura, Monday Night Football, two big upsets, I would say. Dolphins winning or losing in a very, choking way against the Titans, up 14 with 3 minutes left, end up blowing the game 28-27. Let's start right there in Miami. As let's think of this in a macro perspective, Laura. Miami just, I feel like they're missing something with this team. It's been that way the past few years. They have the ingredients, it seems like, to have a championship team. They have the record, they have the flash. Why can't I buy all the way into this team?
Well, Lewis, this team has been plagued with injuries. If you were watching the game, their starting center goes out. Tron Armstead has been in and out the lineup all year long. And the thing
I know
about their
Jalen Phillips
offense,
got hurt.
of course, he tore his ACL and he's also done for the season. And the thing about this Miami offense, Lewis, is they, like you said earlier this season, they really love this zone outside run scheme, but they don't have anybody in between the tackles to gain those tough yards, pick up those short third downs and really convert on those. And then when Tyreek Hill goes out of the game, Lewis, their offense turned anemic, if I'm being honest. In the first half, they scored 1 touchdown and 1 field goal, and that touchdown was not by the offense. It was a pick six thrown by Will Levis. Then in the second half, they really get that zone scheme going, running to the outside. But then Tennessee locks in on that. And then again, when they're up 2 scores after the Titans give them the ball at the 5-yard line, muffing the punt, when Will Levis throws a really bad interception again, it put them in good position. But then when they needed to close out the game, Lewis, when they needed to have those tough yards in between the tackles, they just couldn't get it. And that's why you really can't buy into a team like this who can't run the ball effectively. That's why we see teams like the Chiefs this year kind of struggling. They can't run the ball, even with that great offensive line. That's why I'm really confident in a team like the Ravens who are dominating the league in rushing, right? Well, that's why we're confident in a team like the 49ers who are able to ground and pound the ball. And that's why I'm not in on this Dolphins team.
Yeah, I agree with you, but from a different aspect. Well, maybe we're on the same page. I'm looking at the other line of scrimmage. Their front seven, their inability just to get off the field and get consistent pressure. I know they're dealing with injuries, and that's a really tough spot to be in. But even with Jalen Phillips, they weren't that aggressive. They weren't that outstanding in those areas. And you trade for a guy like Bradley Chubb, who's been, not that great this season so far. That at least that you would hope with the pick that you gave up to get him, which then turned into Brian Brzee, so for the Saints. So I'm not here to complain. But my thing is, like, with this team, I just feel like they aren't going to be able to close out games defensively come playoff time. Like, if it's a close game and the both offenses are going at it, even if Tyreek and Tua are clicking, if they don't have the ball last, I don't have any confidence that they're going to be able to get a crucial stop come, playoff time. So that's why maybe this team can win a playoff game. Maybe they can win two, but I do not think this team can win 4 consecutive playoff games, or maybe if they, somehow end up with the 1 seed 3. I just don't think they have the ingredients for that sustained playoff success. Now, what teams in the NFL do right now? Most of them are in the NFC. And then the AFC is a lot of question marks. So you can make a case that maybe Miami, their strengths are maybe stronger than the other teams, but their weaknesses certainly are very weak right now, and they need to improve.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen this throughout the league. The middle of the field has been a big thing for like the offense of this Dolphins and the defense. We saw the changes that Mike Vrabel did to kind of to button up the middle of the field, have those linebackers following those receivers on those, crossing routes. And Tua really struggled in that second half trying to, not be able to throw deep to Tyreek Hill and have Jalen Waddle on a crosser open all the time. So that was really difficult for them to see. And then in this game, right, like you said, this Dolphins defense, they don't have the greatest guys on the defensive line. And, they brought in Jalen Ramsey, and Javon Holland is outstanding along with Xavier Howard, but they really don't have that guy, that presence in the middle of the field to kind of stop, guys like DeAndre Hopkins who are torturing them down the field and throughout the middle. Okongwu also tearing up the middle. And so now you face a team like the Ravens, face a team like the Chiefs or the Bills. It's going to be a lot more difficult for this defense, Lewis, in the playoffs.
His name's Okongwu?
Yeah, the tight end.
The tight end for the Titans? Okay, I'm thinking of the Atlanta Hawks center. What I want to ask you, and I want to give a quick shout out to Mike Vrabel, because even though they're not winning games this year and they don't look that sharp, I want to give him credit because the way they pulled out this game, I've always respected Mike Vrabel. I think he's done a ton with the lack of talent they've had. He's always had an identity of a tough, gritty football coach with a tough, they always do the right things to win. They just need that quarterback. Well, I mean, Will Levis has shown me some promise, Laraib. And when I say promise, I mean like things you can't coach. He's doing those things at an elite level. Like the arm talent is absolutely there. The improvisation is there. The strength to stand in the pocket, to make plays with his legs, and to do the extracurricular things that most of the quarterbacks in the league are not giving you. Now, he struggles in some of the mind things, some of the reading the game, but that'll come with time. So I want to ask you, Laraib, this is a very interesting hypothetical that I was thinking about. If you stripped away the teams and you said, start a franchise today and consider current contracts, consider coaching, weapons, everything, would you rather have Will Levis or Tua Tagovailoa as your quarterback?
Now, this is a really interesting question, but who would I rather have? So this is my team.
Your team, the 33rd NFL team.
Okay, and I build my own offense, but I'm picking the quarterback, and I have first pick.
First pick.
Ooh, I mean,
those two are available.
You see the intangibles with Will Levis, but for Tua, he has the ability to do something. Oof, I mean, I gotta take Will Levis. I think he has the ability to have a higher ceiling, Lewis. We've seen Tua, this might be his peak right here, the way he's played this season, right? This is as far as he could probably take you. When you have guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the outside, it really doesn't get much easier for a quarterback. And for Will Levis, like you said, his arm talent, the ability for him to zip balls in there on a bullet pass, Lewis, was insane. He had a marvelous throw to Okongwu last night, if I do say so myself. And so based off of ceiling, I think untapped potential, I will go with Will Levis. Now, in Tennessee, they don't have the greatest defense, like you mentioned. They don't have the greatest offensive line, and Derrick Henry's really slowed down this season. But if they can start getting some offensive line help, defensive line has got some good guys over there with Jeffrey Simmons. But if they start building this team again, Lewis, like they did a couple years ago, with great offensive line talent, great rushing ability, and just stout defensiveness, could be a team on the up and up, especially with their new stadium being built over there in Tennessee.
Well, I'm glad you entertained the question because I agree with you. I would take Will Levis. I just think, like you mentioned, from a ceiling perspective, I think his tangible abilities are far greater than what Tua can bring you. And we see in the NFL, I mean, you need more guys like Will Levis to compete in the biggest of games. And I like Tua. I like the things he's done. But, in a vacuum, I like the talent of Will Levis. But that's enough. I don't want the Tuanon to start coming at us. So we'll go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and talk about another AFC team. We have the Kansas City Chiefs, who fall to 8-5 on the year. Laraib, my biggest question, they lose 2 games in a row, and we've talked about their offensive struggles all year long. And in that game, it was kind of more of the same. They get off to a super slow start. They do good things to come back, but then a receiver makes a stupid play at the wrong time, and they have another crushing loss. I mean, how many times has this happened all year long? Now, the Packers game wasn't really the receiver's fault. That was the refs. This game, you could maybe argue the same, which I personally would, just
And I
because
wouldn't.
he did it all game and then you decide to call it. Now, obviously, the ref didn't know what was going to happen on that play. It could have been an incomplete pass, but I don't know. Just don't throw that flag. It's annoying. I'm not arguing that he wasn't offsides. It was blatant, but that's kind of lame. You know what I mean?
No, I
Anyway,
definitely agree. Going back to the Super Bowl where they had that holding call on James Bradbury to kind of ice the game for the Chiefs, kind of one of those similar type plays where it's not really affecting what happened in the play. It could have called it either way. But this Patrick Mahomes reaction was maybe the worst I've ever seen. Now, if that was from last week in that Packers game where they blatantly missed the opposite or the pass interference in that one, I think he can have that reaction. But in this one, where the guy is clearly offsides, I just didn't appreciate that reaction from Patrick Mahomes calling out the
yeah,
refs and different
that
things
was
like that.
puzzling to me because last week he handled it with a lot of grace and he was commended. Like, dang, Mahomes, consummate leader, really, just saying all the right things after an awful call like last week. And then this week, it's like, what happened? And then people I lost my respect for Mahomes. Like, shut up. What? He's allowed to bitch about a call every once in a while. We all do it.
No, I think that's part of the frustration building over there in Kansas City, Lewis. Like you said, when the offense gets off to slow starts, when you lose games you're not really supposed to on the road or at home, it's just really frustrating for him. And then when, like you said, receivers are dropping balls all season long, its tension is only going to build over there, Lewis. And then talking about the defense, in years past for this Chiefs team, it was a defense that always started off on a really slow start, giving up a lot of points, and then they really buttoned down in the end of the season. Now this year, it's been the complete opposite, Lewis. Their defense is hot to start, and now they've kind of given up big plays all the time. Even with Nick Bolton back in this game, Lewis, their star middle linebacker, it just wasn't the same sort of defense we're used to seeing. I saw Trent McDuffie and his Diffie aura get crossed up by Jalen Tuddy on one of those plays, and so the Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs. It's going to be Mahomes always at quarterback. They're always going to have a chance, but we might be entering at least this season an era or a time where Patrick Mahomes struggles to move the ball with Travis Kelce getting older and just inconsistent weapons on the outside.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, one of the more underrated losses of this Chiefs team was Eric Bieniemy. And it wasn't just because, obviously Andy Reid is the offensive guru and Mahomes is the machine. So it's like, well, where did Bieniemy even fit in? I think where Bieniemy fit in was and I heard this from, I think it was maybe Nick Wright or someone on Fox. And he was saying Bieniemy was like the bad cop. Andy Reid was here's our plays. He's the brain, but Bieniemy was the enforcer. He was the one who was like, you stay offside or you stay on sides. You make sure, the fine details like catching the ball, running the right route, getting on the same page, really getting those young guys in like on the same page, which some of the Washington receivers were complaining about earlier on in the season. Like, dang, he's hard. He's a real asshole. That's what they were saying. Like, Ron, please, he's so mean to us. And that's what I feel like they're missing right now in Kansas City. They're missing that the guy who's holding all these young receivers and playmakers on the offense accountable, the guy to light them up in the meetings and really make sure that they're on their page, because all the drops, and it's not even just like this is a one-off thing. They lead the league in drops and all the crucial penalties and plays of just, you can't trust him late in games. Against the Eagles, Marquez Valdez-Scantling like wide open, drops a touchdown. And it's just like, damn, we can't catch a break. So I think that's one of the more underrated losses for this Chiefs team. And I don't think these things are going to improve this season, Laraib. Teams aren't going to win the Super Bowl every single year. And it's looking like with this loss and their fifth loss of the season, they are not going to control their destiny in the playoffs. I don't think that they're going to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Now, does that mean Baltimore or Miami aren't going to lose a game they shouldn't earlier on and still give Miami or Mahomes home field advantage? That could happen. I'm not saying that won't, but it's going to be a much more uphill climb for the Chiefs this year with all the struggles they've had on both sides of the ball, like you mentioned, because no one's talking about the defense slowly starting to decline. Well, that's a good point that you brought up.
Yeah, and I kind of have to agree with your Bieniemy story. If you remember from last year, when the Colts went to Indianapolis and they lost that game, Mahomes and Bieniemy at the end of the game were going at it on the way to the locker room. And so I feel like you're onto something, Lewis, with that accountability thing. And like you mentioned, now they only lead their division by one game, Lewis. The Broncos get back by one game, have the ability.
They're not losing the division.
I don't know, Lewis, because they played Detroit and on Saturday. Detroit hasn't been, the greatest team.
Who plays Detroit?
Denver.
No, they don't.
They played Detroit on Saturday.
Oh, my bad. I was thinking of Las Vegas for some reason. Go on.
No, yeah. So Denver will be going to Detroit. And like I said, Detroit hasn't been playing the greatest football the last couple of weeks.
And who do the Chiefs play?
Who do the Chiefs play?
The Patriots.
Bill Belichick, he's not going to want to lose however many games in a row. So, I mean,
hey, he got his win.
He's always going to want to continue that win streak. Bailey Zappi's going to be trying his hardest. The way this Chiefs team is playing, Lewis, anything is possible.
Yeah, Chiefs are only 9.5-point favorites. I will be slamming their spread in that game. I think the Chiefs still win their division. Now, finally, it'll be a challenge from someone else in the division. Thankfully, that we get to see them not lock it up by this time in December every year. Because Herbert could never get to that point that Sean Payton has gotten to. Maybe if Sean Payton was coaching Herbert, we'd be in a different conversation. But that's neither here nor there. I still, despite saying all that, I still lean Chiefs to come out of the AFC, given the field. I know we talked about it last week. I still lean Chiefs just given the experience at the top. The Mahomes, Reed, Kelsey, Chris Jones, Spagnuolo, that brain trust, it's hard to doubt and it's hard to fade those guys. Now, there's some better, well-run teams in the AFC, but are they going to be able to win a high-stakes playoff game against all that experience that Kansas City has? I don't know. We'll have to see. But this iteration of the Chiefs team, this isn't like the past few years where it's like, I hope someone can knock them off. It's no. The Chiefs are now on equal playing field with everybody else. They are not a step ahead. They are a part of the contenders. They are not the favorite in my eyes.
I definitely agree. And you mentioned a team like the Ravens, who Lamar Jackson, has he won a meaningful playoff game in his career? Nope. I don't think so. You look at Josh Allen, he's due for a couple interceptions a game. So
he's also in the 11th seed right now.
And yeah, are they even going to make the playoffs, Lewis? I think
Right.
they sneak in somehow, some way, because there's a lot
Hopefully.
of teams that are at 7-6, and anything can happen, Lewis. Let's go on to another team that's lost two in a row, the Philadelphia Eagles, Lewis, losing at Dallas this week, and now they lose that grip on their division. And so, what do you think is wrong with this Eagles team, Lewis, and what can they do to fix it and secure some more playoff or Super Bowl hopes?
The defense has been awful. And I mean awful the past 2 weeks. The It's something to be said when you get touchdowns instead of field goals scored on you. That's never good. But when it's consecutive drives over and over and over where you're giving up touchdown, 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 at some point your offense can't come back no matter who you have. We talk about Jalen Hurts as the comeback kid. He's been able to come back from so many leads this season, and he just keeps finding a way. If you're down 21 points in the third quarter, it's really hard to come back from that, especially when you keep fumbling the ball all game long and you can't get out of your own way. It's going to be really hard to get out. I mean, to come back. They go ahead and they sign a guy like Shaq Leonard. So maybe as he starts to gel, the defense starts to get better. But, you bring in a guy like Kevin Byard, and I actually thought that he was acclimating pretty well. But the last two games, I mean, golly, it's been rough for these boys. And I don't know how it gets better. Maybe these two all-pro guys and Byard and Shaq Leonard acclimate quickly come playoff time. If they're able to get the 1 seed, which right now they're in the 5 seed, but due to conference record, if they beat the Giants 2 times in the next few games, they will be back on top if everything sits still. So they're actually still the favorite to win the 1 seed right now, even though it looks like they're in the last spot. They are the favorite for the 1 seed. So if that's the case, maybe they have a week that could really do them justice. But as it stands right now, and I said this last week, Laraib, my NFC hierarchy is San Francisco, Dallas, Philly. Drop off. That's where it stands for me right now. And I don't know. They need to be able to gel on defense, Laraib. I'm not seeing that right now.
Yeah, I mean, no matter I don't care if you're playing the number one offense and the number two offense in back-to-back weeks, letting up 72 points combined for the last 2 weeks is just not a good look, Lewis. And then
No.
on offense, I think they said this earlier a couple of weeks ago that Jalen Hurts has some sort of injury in his knee, and it's kind of starting to show. Lewis, his mobility has not been the same in the pocket or getting out of the pocket. It looks like AJ Brown has been starting to get locked up there, I say, the past 2 weeks by Charvarius Ward and Stephon Gilmore. And, it's just frustrating to see if you're an Eagles fan talking about this defense, which was stellar last year, and then you just lose a couple guys. But you still have these big names, right? You still have Darius Big Play Slay. You know why they call him Big Play, Lewis? Because he's given up a lot of big plays. Then you got James Bradbury, who was, probably the acquisition of the season for them last year. He kind of, brought in that second guy to help them on defensively, and he just hasn't been the same this year. And so I really don't know what they do from here. It's not like, the defensive front seven got any worse from last year, maybe losing some no-name guys, but still, if they want to win the Super Bowl, Lewis, and they have to go into San Francisco and play that 49ers team, or they have to go to Dallas and play that Cowboys team, I think it's going to be a real struggle for them.
Yeah, I agree. Thankfully, they have just come off one of the tougher stretches of any team in the NFL this season. They against the Dolphins, at Commanders, home Cowboys, at Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Cowboys. Outside of the Commanders game, but they always kind of have trouble with Washington. Those are all teams who are Super Bowl contenders. Now, you could say the Bills aren't in position right now, but they have the upper echelon talent to be a Super Bowl contender. So you can just say that fatigue is playing a role right now with this team. But, this is the NFL. That's going to happen in the playoffs, and you're playing playoff caliber teams week after week after week. You need to be on your A game, especially against the 49ers and Cowboys, who are your biggest competition. So thankfully now at least the Eagles can say our next 4 games at Seattle, who has been reeling. And then you have the Giants twice and the Cardinals. So that's not exactly a murderer's row of team. And if they just go 4-0, start figuring things out, start getting guys healthy over this stretch, then I think they can be in a good position back in the NFC. Like we both said, that we still feel confident in this team, and the overall makeup of it as a Super Bowl contender, but they need to show it. And this defense seems like it's getting worse week after week, which is definitely a problem. But Laraib, let's go ahead and talk about one of the biggest awards, and we haven't really given it much attention this year because there hasn't been a crazy competitive race. It's kind of like, gee, who do we give the MVP award to this year? Because in past years, it's Mahomes versus Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. And then even, I remember the Mahomes Drew Brees race was getting really hot up until the end when Mahomes, kind of cleared it out of the way. But like this year, it kind of feels like I guess we give it to Dak. Is Brock Purdy the MVP? So as it stands right now, Laraib, who is your NFL MVP?
My MVP has to be Dak Prescott, Lewis. After all the naysayers from last year talking about his interceptions, that was me. Just talking about how this Cowboys team is really always showboating and front running when it comes down to those big games. They always lose, Lewis. But this year they've kind of just been on a different trajectory, if I'm being honest. Even when they lost Trayvon Diggs, they still been fighting defensively. In the offense this year, and Dak, I think he can. I think he has the ability to win the award, Lewis. Now, if Jalen Hurts plays these last 4 games and goes on an absolute tear against those subpar teams, I think he could easily grab it because this Cowboys team still has to play the Lions, Lewis. They still have to play the Dolphins. And so they have a couple tests on their schedules. But if Dak Prescott can continue the way he's played, Lewis, 2+ touchdowns in, 5 or 6 games in a row, I think he is in a good spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think Dak is the favorite right now, and he should be. But when it comes to, I don't know, it's just weird that the second favorite right now on FanDuel is Brock Purdy. And I think Brock Purdy, I'll give him credit. I think he's played well this year. And when he had that skid, we did attack him. We said, yep, there he is. This is the real Brock Purdy. That's why he won't win a championship. But I will say this. He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He doesn't make the mental mistakes and just boneheaded plays like Jimmy would every other game. And he just plays good, consistent ball. He's a very high-level processor. He gets the ball on time, on target to all of his receivers. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of miscommunication with him. Like, he's always on the same page. But you cannot be the MVP of the league if you're not the MVP of your own offense. Everyone in the world who watches the 49ers knows Deebo's more valuable, C-Mac's more valuable, Trent Williams is more valuable, and Kyle Shanahan is more valuable than Brock Purdy. Now, you can also make the argument, hey, they had all those guys against the Eagles last year, and when Brock Purdy went out, they got smoked. That's fair, but their backup quarterback was also Josh Johnson, and when he got flattened, it was Christian McCaffrey. So, not a great sample size of guys to compare him to. But, I mean, I understand. He's a good quarterback. I will give you that. He is a Pro Bowl level quarterback as it stands right now. But you can't tell me if he was on the Panthers, he'd be having a similar season. I'm sorry. And I understand weapons have a thing to play with it. Dak's having a great year, but a lot of that is because CeeDee Lamb's having a renaissance. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and a great offensive line. I get it. But it's out of hand when you see these graphics. Here's the big primetime game. Dak Prescott against Christian McCaffrey. And his MVP quarterback is also on the team. Like, that's not how things work in the NFL. So can we please stop it? If you're betting Brock Purdy MVP, you are a fool.
Yeah, I think, guys like Lamar Jackson should be ahead of him on that list. I think guys like Tyreek Hill should be ahead on that list. Lewis, now, I don't know if we're going to have the debate right now about how this shouldn't be a quarterback's award, Lewis, but I feel like those guys obviously have a step ahead of Brock Purdy. I have to agree with what you were saying, not only because I'm a Seahawks fan, but also because I'm a 49ers hater.
Yeah, but what I'll say about not being a quarterback award, quarterback is the most valuable position on any NFL team. And the best quarterback, usually on the best team, seems like the most valuable player in the NFL. Now, there are players who are more valuable than quarterbacks. Trust me. I think Tyreek Hill, we saw it last night. He is more valuable than Tua Tagovailoa. There is no doubt about that in my mind. But I just don't think they have quite the impact because they are secondary players. Even some of the defensive guys this year, like TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, it's just like they aren't as productive as some of these quarterbacks are consistently. So I get that it shouldn't be as quarterback centric as it is, where guys like Brock Purdy are ahead of guys who are more valuable on their own team. But I still think that quarterbacks shouldn't be downplayed. It's the hardest position, it's the most valuable position in the sport. So I disagree with you there. Nah, let me hear it.
Well, I mean, they do touch the ball in every single play, Lewis,
Uh-huh.
except for some of those wildcat plays. But I still think Tyreek Hill, on the pace he's been on this season, I think he should be top 3 in my opinion. Dak, he's been playing really well, and he's been leading this Cowboys team. We saw the same Cowboys team last year with Cooper Rush, Lewis, have the ability to string a couple wins together. So it's not like it's just a quarterback who's only doing everything and only anything for an offense. I think 1 year or a couple of years, we'll see somebody win the running back or a wide receiver win the award, Lowe's.
Yep. I mean, I'm not against it, right? But they need to have a truly outstanding season. If Tyreek Hill breaks the receiving record, doesn't seem like he will, unfortunately, because of the injury, then I would have definitely considered him. But unless they have a truly outstanding year and they are the reason their team is in a great position, like JJ Watt back in 2014, he should have won MVP that year. I don't think Aaron Rodgers should have won it. But that's the very few, people I would choose. Aaron Donald in 2020. I think he was better than Tom Brady that year. That's just me. But it is what it is.
Yeah, even if you look at Cooper Rush in his outstanding season when he had the Triple Crown, Lewis.
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp, excuse me. Got me all caught up on Cooper Kupp had the Triple Crown, Lewis. He was, almost broke Megatron's record. He won Super Bowl. He was a big factor in the Super Bowl, and he won Super Bowl MVP. He still did not. That's post, right? But still, he was the outstanding season he had, and still wasn't even considered for the MVP. I think that's just something that's got to change.
Well, yeah, some of that's also because Stafford's also very good, and I think that may have counteracted it. But you're right. You're right. But I don't know. I need to see a lot more from, and the only position to win in the last 10 years that's not quarterback was Adrian Peterson.
AP 2012.
Yeah, and that was 10 years ago. So pretty soon, there won't be any outliers.
We're due.
I guess, or things are just a changing in the NFL. But we both agree. We think it's Dak, and good for him. I think he's been under a lot of criticism the past few years. I think he's really elevated his play this year. You lose Kellen Moore and you elevate your game. That's huge. And I think we also need to give credit to Mike McCarthy and how he's been able to control this offense. We give him a lot of crap. I give him a lot of crap for some of the in-game decisions. And I'm not saying he won't have a Mike McCarthy moment come playoff time, but give them a lot of credit for how they've been able to stabilize this offense. No Ezekiel Elliott. They've been finding ways to win through the passing game on Dak's arm. So shout out to the Cowboys. I'll give them some credit, Laraib.
Yeah, credit where credit is due, Lewis. Well, let's go ahead and move on to Thursday night football, Lewis.
Yes.
We have my Los Angeles Chargers going to Las Vegas, Lewis. We're in Las Vegas playing the Raiders. Raiders -3, Lewis. And the big thing in this game is Justin Herbert is out for the season, unfortunately. That means my guy, Easton Stick, is going to be in there at quarterback against Aiden O'Connell and the matchup for the ages in Las Vegas, Lewis. I bet the tickets for this game are really cheap. I mean, we should go if I'm being honest. But I mean, I don't even know what to say for this game, Lewis.
What I'll say, Laraib, is that Quentin Johnson had his best game of the year when Easton Stick got into the game. Okay. So all I'm saying is maybe this Chargers team is better.
Okay. So you're telling me the Chargers should trade another quarterback to the New Orleans Saints, potentially? And they can maybe have another potentially Hall of Fame career, potentially?
I need some doctors to say Justin Herbert's injury is career-threatening.
His index finger on his throwing arm.
But also that means a catastrophic hurricane needs to come through pretty soon. It'll be worth it.
Oh,
It'll
really?
Be worth it. Anyway, this game, I like the Chargers. I think Easton Stick's a good, could show some things. I liked what I saw from him last game. Give me the Chargers.
Nah, I mean, I'm picking against this Chargers team for the rest of the season. I'm hoping they lose out. I'm hoping every single statistic goes against this team just so Brandon Staley has the highest probability of being fired. I like the Raiders in this one, Lewis, who were anemic on offense last week, to pick it up a little bit. Give me the Raiders 9-3.
Give me the Chargers in this one, 17-10, and a awful game that we will not be watching.
Because we'll be at Sicily's.
Yeah, we'll see. And also, we might be busy on that Thursday, so we do not know whether or not our picks will be coming out. Even if you're watching this far into the video, which we know you aren't. Anyway, Laura, anything you want to say before we head out of here?
Yes. Remember to comment on the video and also like so I can get $1 from Lewis.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the First and Goal podcast. Signing out.
Peace.